Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining.
And I also have two friends that
I am running just like you all. I am running straight from another session. So if you give me just a quick second to get myself adjusted, then we will have a much smoother experience in the next minute. I want to make sure I've got everything open that I need open. And this is perfect because it gives anyone else transitioning from another session a moment to as well. Okay, folks, we're going to get started in about another minute. I want to see if there's anyone else that might be joining in from another session. And in the meantime, I will drop in the agenda for today's session if you want to give it a look. But we'll get started in about 1 minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump into just a few logistical things to get us started. And that's also going to give other people that opportunity to join us if they're coming in from another session. I want to just say hello and thank you again for joining this morning. I'm really excited to work with you all today and tell you all of the great things that you can do with your smart board with IQ. So to start us off, I'll introduce myself in just a few minutes. I want to make sure that everybody, before I do that and forget, I want to make sure that everybody has access to the agenda. And I know I've dropped it in and Karen's gone ahead and dropped it in there for you as well. And so the reason why I want to look at this agenda is there are a lot of really great resources in here for you. So I recommend going to File and either making a copy of this agenda or downloading your own copy of this agenda. And not only does it show you how we're spending our time here together, which is, important, I think the most important thing for you here is going to be all of these linked resources that I've dropped in. So there's some topics that I have dropped in a direct video or a direct step-by-step guide if you need to review how to do any of the things that we're talking about today. And when you scroll all the way down to the bottom, my favorite part of any training is this large bank of resources that I'm able to provide you, beginning with a copy of today's session file. So if you are one of those people, you're like, I want a copy of this to have my own, you already have a copy available for you there, as well as some resources to some quick videos and step-by-step guides that's going to recap everything that we cover today. So we're going to have a little bit less than an hour today. It's going to go pretty quick, and I'm going to be showing you a lot of things, and you're probably not going to retain all of it, and that's totally fine. You can come back to these resources when you're ready to level up, and all of the videos will be less than 5 minutes, and the step-by-step guides are really quick and to the point because we know teachers don't have a lot of time, and we can't waste your time. And so those are going to be really quick and to the point. I really encourage you to take a look at them. Additionally, you'll notice that there's also the option to register for live webinars. And if you can't attend them live, you can scroll to the bottom and access the free recorded sessions, or you could even sign up and the sessions can be sent directly to your email. And that's going to allow you to also further your learning. And if you need any additional professional learning hours, there is a certificate of completion available at the end of any of those live or recorded webinars. Now, the last thing that I'll leave you with in this agenda bank here is my email address, and I'm also putting it in the Google Meet chat if you are using that chat. And I just want you to know that my support for you does not end after this session today. I am happy to answer any questions or wonderings you have, or if you run into any issues, please feel free to send me an email if you need additional support. So all of these resources are completely free for you, and I really encourage you to dive into them whenever you need them. So now that I have given you all those, I'm going to go ahead and go back over to my presentation now. And again, that agenda link is in the chat if you need to grab it. And now we're going to go ahead and dive into the session. And I'll begin with some introductions. Like I said, good morning. My name is Sarah Merritt McCoy, and I'm a smart professional development specialist. And so my background is actually as a classroom teacher and school administrator for several years before joining the Smart Professional Learning team. And what I do is I get to work with teachers and educators all over North America and how to actually use their smart board and smart products purposefully and intentionally in the classroom. So some of the tips, tricks, and strategies that I show you are actually going to be embedded in pedagogy and instructional practice. That way you can actually have a realistic way to use this in your classroom every day. And I am joining you today from Houston, Texas. So you will hear a lot of y'all come out in the training. My Canadian participants usually love that. They think it's hilarious. So I guarantee you there's going to be some y'all dropped in. And one more time here is my email as well as my smart Twitter account if you want to give a follow for any tips and strategies for how to use your smart board and Lumio. So now that you know a little bit about me, I want to know a little bit about you all and who we have on the chat. So I'm asking you to take a minute to hop over to that Google Meet chat and let me know your role. And if you're a classroom teacher, that includes your grade level and subject you teach, and any goals you have for today's session that you want me to be aware of. So I'll take a minute to let you all drop that in the chat. That's way I can see who I have here with me today. 6th grade, 6 to 12, that's a large grade band. Grade 4, high school physics. Terry, I needed you years and years ago as a tutor. Awesome. And I love that, Matthew, you're seeing what you can bring back to your staff. Yeah, for sure. As we're going through the session today, anything, any tool that you all learn that you love, please share and let your other teacher friends or educator friends know. Because if it's something you love and it's saving you time in the classroom, you best believe somebody else definitely wants to take advantage of it. Yep, wanting to use the smartboard in daily activities. Good. I'm hoping I can show you some different ways to do that here today. Keep letting me know in the chat who we've got here, and I'll keep an eye on that to see who we've got here with us. But I'm going to go ahead and move us along. That way we can go ahead and get into today's session. So for today, we're going to begin by learning some of the basic navigation, function, and care of your board. Now, we're going to be spending a large amount of time exploring the engagement tools that you have available to you in your board. And that's going to be those daily activities and the daily use of the board that you can start thinking about. And as we're going through the session, I always tell my participants, I want you to be selfish during my session. I want you to think about you. So it's basically you the whole time. How will you use the smartboard in your classroom? And that's because you are the subject matter expert. You know your teaching style and you know your students the best. So as I'm going through and showing you some different activities and ideas, think about how you can adjust it or edit it to fit your style and your content in classroom. Because at the end, I'm going to ask you for any ideas that you have, and I'd love to see some of the things that you're thinking about in brainstorming. So we're going to go ahead and begin by learning some of the basics for your panel. And the first is safety and care. When talking about your panel, you basically have a large, very large computer or tablet in your classroom. So a lot of the things that you would consider when taking care of a computer or tablet are going to apply to your smartboard. The first being, make sure you don't have any magnets on your smartboard. Because if you put magnets in the wrong spot on your smartboard, it could interfere with some of the inner workings of the board. Now, there are some magnets that are already at the bottom to hold your pens, and that's intentional. There are certain materials there that are going to protect your board from those magnets. So don't put any additional magnets on your board. Next is you don't want to put any tape directly onto your display. Your display is a large touch screen display. So if you have tape anywhere on your board, it might mistakenly think that that is somebody's point of touch trying to access the board there, and that could interfere with whatever you're working on. Additionally, it's going to leave behind a sticky residue, and this includes painter's tape. And as a big touch display, when you or your students are going and interacting with the sticky residue that's left behind, it could leave behind a mess and make your board a lot dirtier than it needs to be. So I always tell people no tape at all on the board. But or I should say, additionally, there's not going to be anything sprayed onto your board. So that includes do not spray any water, any Lysol, or any electronic cleaner directly on your board. Because there are sensors all around your board, and you could mistakenly clog up those sensors whenever you're spraying the liquid onto the board. And so you might be wondering, well, how do I clean my board then? If I can't use water and I can't use an electronic cleaner, what do I use? Most of the time, a microfiber towel is going to do the trick. So once a week, once every other week, if you get a microfiber towel and just wipe down your board, it's going to eliminate all of the smudges and fingerprints on your board. And often that's all you're going to need. However, if you need a little bit more elbow grease or you want a deeper clean, there are additional steps you can take. You're going to take that microfiber towel, take that spray bottle that you're not spraying on the board, and instead spray that water or that electronic cleaner directly onto the microfiber towel. Get that microfiber towel a little damp, and then you can go wipe the board with that damp cloth. That is okay. It will not clog up the sensors when you're using it that way. Um, Water or electronic cleaner will do the trick. If you do not want to buy electronic cleaner and you want to do a deep clean of your board, you do not have to go out and buy a special cleaner or a special smartboard cleaner. Instead, you can go to your agenda with the resources that I just showed you, and there's a link there with details on how to safely clean your board. That's going to recap some of the things I'm going over now. And it's also going to show you a 3-ingredient at-home solution you can make. I know it has bleach and water, and then I think the third ingredient might be vinegar. But there's just quick 3 at-home ingredients that you can use. You can make a quick solution. Put that on the microfiber towel cloth, and then clean your board for a deep clean if you want. And it's right there on your agenda. So go ahead and fix that. Additionally, you want to make sure that you and your students always have clean hands before using the board because it is that touch display. And lastly, you want to make sure that you don't have any Sharpies or markers or pens anywhere near the board, and instead only keep the included smart pens at the board. I really, really urge you to only keep those pens near the board because 9 times out of 10, when we get a report that somebody has vandalized their board, it's an accident. And somebody is using muscle memory or autopilot. And this is both teachers and students. They go up to the board and they just grab the device that they might be used to grabbing or a pen or a marker that's nearby. And they go and they write on the board without realizing, oh snap, I accidentally picked up a Mr. Sketch marker or a Sharpie. 9 times out of 10, it is an accident and just autopilot or muscle memory. So I always tell folks, To avoid that altogether, don't have any of those other writing utensils at the board. So that way you're only grabbing those provided smart pens when you're on that autopilot mode. Most of the time it happens because, as teachers, we're looking out at our class. We don't put our backs to our class often. So you grab it without noticing. Eliminate that altogether and only have those included pens. Now, if you have any other questions about safety and care or any questions throughout the training today that I haven't addressed, please let me know in the chat. If it's something that I'm going to cover later in the training, I might save it for later in the training. Or if it's something that I can't answer live and in the moment, I'll compile a list of frequently asked questions and make sure that those answers get sent out to you. So that chat is available for you as we go along. Okay, next we want to go over some of the buttons and ports on your board. So here is a look at what your MX smartboard looks like. And so everyone that's in this training should have a board that looks like this or supports teachers that have a board that looks like this. And here we've got the front ports on the left-hand side. And so we've got those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ports that are available to you in the front. And these same ports are also available in the side of the board as well. So a teacher can have their choice to plug them in the front or in the side. Now that includes the USB-C, the HDMI, the USB-B, and the 2 other USBs. And what I like to do is I always mention that these USB ports include a wireless mouse or keyboard. So if you have a wireless mouse and or keyboard that has one of those little USB plugins, one of those little USB plugins, you can plug them in at the front or side of your smartboard and use a wireless mouse and keyboard anywhere in your classroom to activate and do things on your board. So that really is going to increase some of your flexibility if you don't want to be standing up at your board for the entire class period. Now, these front ports and these side ports are also going to be where you plug in your computer or a document camera if you want to switch to another device. Now, additionally, there are more ports along the bottom of your board. So if you go to the back of your board and look under the bottom, there's additional ports like a VGA and a headphone or a speaker jack if you need additional plugins. So there's a lot of options there. Now, most of the time, you're going to be fine with the speakers that are included on the smart board. You have 20-watt speakers on your board, and they're nice, crisp, clean, and loud. And often, that's all you'll need as a classroom teacher. But if you're a music teacher or you're in the gym and you need a larger sound output, going in the back of the smart board, and again, looking underneath the panel, there is that audio jack if you need to plug in an additional speaker, or you can, of course, use a Bluetooth speaker as well. Now, a few things about the buttons. So the first is going to be your home button. And anytime you click that home button, it's going to bring you to this display. And that's because your board has its own computer processing system in it called IQ. What that means is, like I said, you've got a big computer. So anytime you click home, this is bringing you back to your smartboard or your smartboard's computer's home display. And we're going to go over that in more depth in a second. Then you've got the input button. When you click that input select button, let me switch my screen to show you. When you click that input select button, that's going to allow you to leave the smartboard's computer system. And instead, you can project your own computer system, laptop, desktop, whatever computer you have. And that includes anything like a document camera that you might want to plug in any of these other HDMI or VGA inputs, pardon me. Okay, you reload that. Now, that was, again, our home button and then our input select button. Now, moving right along, and hopefully my screen will catch up with us here in a second, is, I believe, the screen shade button. Yes. So I'll show you that picture once it comes up. So the screen share button you would tap and it's going to draw a screen over your entire board. And that's if you want to cover up anything on your display. Maybe you want to do a big reveal later. But when you hit that screen shade button, it's going to draw a gray screen over it. And it's when using the button on the front of the board, it's an all or nothing screen shade. So you're either covering up the whole board or you click it and you can reveal the whole board. So when using those buttons on the front, all or nothing. There's also a freeze screen button if you want to freeze your display on a screen, or if you have your computer plugged in and you want to freeze the display on one window and continue doing something on your computer in another window, that freeze screen button is going to keep the display frozen on whatever window you decide. And when you click that freeze screen button, it's going to have a large pause in the middle of your screen. And when you're ready to play and make it active and a live screen again, you'll just re-click this button and it's going to go ahead and put it play in active mode again. Then you've got that volume down and volume up button, exactly what it sounds like. And then the last button is our power button. Now, this power button is a bit of a misnomer. It's kind of when you click that power button, it puts your board into sleep mode. It does not actually power off your board. It's like I always tell people, you're basically turning off the lights on your board when you hit that power button. Just like a sleep mode on your computer or your phone, or like a lock screen on your phone. However, whenever I hit that power button again, it's going to immediately turn on. I've just turned the lights back on my board. And so what I want you to know is that power button does not power off your display. It's still running in the background. It's still connected to Wi-Fi and all of the applications that you have open. And that's intentional because when you leave for the day, you can hit that power button to turn off the lights or put it to sleep if you want. But you want your board still connected to Wi-Fi because we send out over-the-air updates at night. So every time your smart board gets updated, it's at night or over the weekend because we do not want to interrupt your classroom instruction time. And so when you leave for the day, you don't want to power your device all the way down because then you won't get those updates. And so that's why when you tap that power button, it's basically just sleep mode. Now, there are going to be times when you need to power off your display all the way. You might need to restart it. I will be honest and say you do not need to turn off your board frequently. It's not like every weekend you need to turn off your board before you leave. Oftentimes, you're only turning off the board before summer break or spring break, and that's pretty much it. However, if you notice your board is not running how you want it to, maybe it's lagging or the touch is off or it's not connecting to Wi-Fi, you're running into issues. Just like any piece of technology, sometimes it just needs a restart. Just like when we restart our phone to get it working again or we restart our computer, your smartboard might need a quick restart to kind of get that fresh breath of air. And you might be tempted to go click this power button and it's not going to help you. To turn off your board completely, in the back of your board, there's a rocker switch that you can rock on or off. Or if you can't get to the back of your board, you can hold down this power button for about 7 to 10 seconds. Hold it down. And then this is going to come up where it says slide to save energy. Once you slide that bar across, then it will shut down your smart board all the way, like completely off. When you're ready to turn it back on, you'll go back to that power button and hold it down until it comes back on. Now that is going to be completely restarting your smart board in order to get it running or connected to Wi-Fi again if it's lagging. Any questions on that, please let me know in the chat. Okay, so now we're going to go over and talk about the two modes of the board. One is that you can connect your computer to the board and actually project your computer display on the board. I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with this. What you would do is you have two cables. You have an HDMI cable that goes from your computer or your document cam, whatever device you might be using. But for today, we're going to talk about a computer. You have the HDMI that goes from your computer and plugs into your smartboard. That's going to allow students to see and hear anything that you're casting from your computer. This is very common for most panels. Oftentimes, you plug in the HDMI, and then teachers have to stand at their computer and navigate everything and control everything from their computer when using this HDMI cord. What sets your smartboard apart is this USB-B cord. When you plug in this second cord from your computer to your smartboard, it's going to allow you to touch anything on your computer from your smartboard. And so what this means is you will be able to see and hear your computer on the smartboard, and you'll be able to touch everything on your computer directly from the smartboard. And so you don't have to stay at your computer. You can actually come up to the board and navigate all the things you need to at the board. And to do that, you would then have to hit that input select button and switch to your computer screen. So I'm going to show you what this looks like now in case this is new to you. But like I said, I think this is a review for most people. So here I'm at my smartboard. I can click this input button down at the bottom, or on the actual board itself, there's also an input button at the bottom. And when I click that, you'll see in HDMI 1, I have my computer plugged in, and it is touch enabled. If you have a document camera as well, you might plug those into one of these others so you can hit input and go back and forth between your computer and a document camera if you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and select my computer. So now my smartboard is leaving the smartboard computer system, and it's actually going to be projecting and showing my computer. So here on my smartboard, because I have that touch cable plugged in, I can go over to my smartboard and manipulate things from my smartboard. And it's going to also be happening on my computer at the same time. Now, the really great thing is when I am using my computer from the smartboard, you'll notice that I have access to this little bubble that appears right here. And this is the Smart Ink bubble. And so when your computer is plugged into the board, you have access to an application called Smart Ink that will allow you to write and draw all over your computer contents. And so when I plugged in my Smart Ink, when I plugged in my computer, my Smart Ink comes up right away. That's these two bubbles. If yours doesn't, you might have to go to the search bar on your computer and type in Smart Ink. When you see this and you click it, it should open up these bubbles for you. If that doesn't work for you, you can go to this search bar and type in Smart Ink Settings. And you might need to have a little check right here. It says Start Smart Ink when you log on. Because the way your settings are set up automatically, it might have accidentally turned off Smart Ink. So again, I did that in the search bar and I typed either Smart Ink or Smart Ink Settings. You might have to try one of those. Now what this does is this is showing my computer display. I could even open up my email and show my students my email on the board if I wanted to. But it's going to show my computer display, and now I can tell my smartboard what I want my finger to be on the board. So when I click this right now, every time I'm at the smartboard, my finger, it's pointing up to a cursor. So when I tap my finger on the smartboard, it's going to act like a cursor. So it's going to help me scroll. I can click into different tabs, etc. But I could click this finger and I could say, hey, smartboard, I want my finger to be a pen instead. And so now whenever I go and use my finger on the smartboard, I have my computer screen right here, but I'm able to annotate and circle things for my students to see. And notice that finger is pointing up to the pen, whereas before it was pointing up to the cursor. to say my finger is a cursor. Now it's pointing up to a pen to say, hey, your finger is going to be a pen that's red. I can also go to these three dots and I have access to a whole host of other different pen features. I can also tell my smartboard, hey, I want my finger to be a toolkit instead. So in my toolbox, I can make my finger a spotlight, a zoom, a stamp, lots of different features that I can do here. So for instance, when I hit spotlight, now when I drag my finger on the board, I'm spotlighting different content for my students. And I can grab this blue line and adjust the size of it if I want. Or I might tell my smartboard, hey, I want my finger to be, this third button is a screen shade. Remember when I mentioned the screen shade on the front of the board? If I click that button on the front of the board, it's all or nothing. However, when my computer is plugged into the board and I activate this screen shade, I can adjust the size of it. So I'm going to hit screen shade. And I can drag down at the top, bottom, or sides, and I can determine what part of my screen I want to cover up. It can be suggested YouTube videos, or maybe I have a Google document open and I've got answers along the right-hand side that I'm going to slowly reveal for my students. Lots of different options there at that screen shade. Let me exit out of that. I'm going to go back to this little hand or this finger icon. And when I click the camera, that's a screenshot. So I can, let's say I am on my Time for Kids here and I've taken all of my really great notes for the day. I can go to this camera or this capture feature and I can take a screenshot or a capture of those notes and then save them on my desktop, or I can choose a location to save in my computer. What I love about this is after I've taken my notes, I can take a quick screenshot of them, save them on my computer to then give to absent students, or maybe I upload them in Google Classroom. Or if a student has an accommodation where they get printed copy of the notes, you could take copy or you could take your notes and then print off a copy of them and really save yourself a step there. I love that feature of Smart Ink. And then I can make my finger here a stamp. So when I or my students come up to the board, I can do one of these built-in stamps, or I can add my own picture and create my own stamp on the board that my students can then select and add to the board. So lots of different ways to customize that feature there. And everything I was showing you there was controlling and telling my smartboard what I wanted my finger to do. Now, notice there's a second bubble I've got over here. On my screen, if you're looking at the Google Meet, it looks like a cursor right in the middle of that bubble. Yours will look different when you plug in your board, and that's just because of how I have my board set up right now. But when you plug in your computer to the board and open up these bubbles, you need to then pick up the pen of your smartboard. This second bubble won't appear unless you have picked up a pen. Once you pick up the pen on the smartboard, this second bubble will appear and it will have a little picture of a pen in the middle here instead of a cursor. And that's because you can tell your smartboard what features you want your pen to be. So just like I could say, hey, when a finger touches my board, here's what I want you to do. You could say, hey, when this pen touches the board, here's what I want you to do. And you have a lot of the same tools. So there's those pens that I just showed you. When I go to the toolkit, you've got those same stamps and spotlights. So all of those tools that we just looked at for your finger, you can also set for your pen when your computer is plugged into the smartboard. What I think is cool is you can set them simultaneously. So you could say, hey, I want my pen to be a thumbs up, and I want my finger to be a thumbs down. So you could have students come up and either choose if something is a thumbs down or thumbs up. Or I could even say, hey, I want my pen to be a blue pen, but I want my finger to be a smiley face. So then I could be writing with my blue pen and then touching and making smiley faces with my fingers. So like I said, you can upload those simultaneously. I think it's really awesome. Now this is only available, these smart ink bubbles, again, when your computer is plugged into the smartboard and you're using your computer on the display. Now, if you have any troubles pulling up this smart ink, maybe it's not opening or it's not coming up, please submit a tech ticket or an IT ticket, pardon me, so your support specialist can help you with that as well. Now, as I'm switching over to our next activity, let me know in the chat anything that you are thinking about for Smart Ink. So here we go. Here's my question for you. Oh, here we go. Karen translated my language. If you're having issues with Smart Ink, submit an orbit ticket for your ETS tech. Thanks, Karen. Now let me know in the chat, after looking at some of these Smart Ink tools, what items might you favorite or what items might you use in an upcoming lesson or activity? And while you are thinking about that, I will show you too that you can add favorites to your Smart Ink. So if I click this little star at the bottom, I can add any of the stamps or tools or pens that I use most often. So then whenever I'm looking at the bubble, it's going to show my favorite tools along the outside. So I can very quickly select that spotlight or select that stamp. And I don't have to go in and follow all of the steps to activate that tool. I can add it along the outside. Okay, remember to let me know in the chat what tools or features you're most interested in. And for while you're putting those in, I am going to show you, for the sake of time, just a few screenshots that I've left in behind. So when you come back to this file, I've left tons of screenshots of everything that I'm covering. So if you go back and look, I've added in a few screenshots and steps for how to use Smart Ink. So if you need to go through and review any of this information, there is some pages captured that recap that. I like Cindy's idea. I love the mix of setting the pen and your finger to different tools. Okay, Robin says, when we switch slides in a presentation, anything that we have circled or written is on the next slide. Is there a quicker way? Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, Robin. Is there a quicker way to erase or clear the board? Yes, and I totally forgot to mention it. So thank you for asking that question. Let me show you. So after you have put all of your notes up on the board, if you want to erase one thing, I'll start off with that. You can use the palm of your hand on the board to erase that one area or that one spot. But like Robin says, sometimes I need to quickly erase everything and I don't want to be just wiping at my board the whole time. You'll notice it's really tiny, but you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, there is a little pen right next to my magnifying glass. When I tap that pen, let me move my bubbles. There we go. When I tap that pen, I have the option to clear all of my ink, or there's one more spot for me to then take another screenshot. So that's another way that you can take a screenshot of the page if you want to save those notes. But most of the time, like Robin says, when I go to a next slide, I'm just going to quickly clear that ink to then clear out my page. That way it's not hanging around. Okay, and then Janelle says the stamps. Yep, I love the stamps. So easy, especially for our littles. You're welcome, Robin. Andrew, how do you stream content from a phone onto the smartboard? I will show you that in just one moment, Andrew. Okay, so that is all of the things that you can do or not all of the things. That's some of my favorite things that you can do when your computer is connected to the board. Now I'm going to go over to show you a few things that you can do with the board by itself. So this is if you do not want to project or cast your computer, or you do not want to plug your computer into the board. You don't have to. You could actually leave your laptop in your backpack, or if you have a desktop computer, you could turn off your desktop computer altogether, and you could just use the board by itself without any extra wires. And that's what I'll show you here today and some of the things you can do. So now we're going to go ahead and switch our brain. You're no longer connecting the computer for the next 20 minutes, and I'll show you all the things you can do on your board. The first thing to know is when your computer is not connected and you're using the board by itself, you will not have access to these smart ink bubbles. And that's because the board has a lot of these tools and features already built in, and I'll show you some of those. So just know if you love these bubbles, your computer has to be plugged in. But I'll show you all the things you can do without it. So now we're going to talk about the board by itself. And so a few things. So whenever you're using the board by itself, here again is that home display. The first thing that you're going to want to do when using the board in your classroom is I really encourage you to sign in to the board. And so you might be wondering, why should I sign in? Well, first, it's easy to sign in. It's the exact same credentials that you use for your school email and password. It's all of the same file. Once you click that little blue face and sign into the board, you're basically then able to set up your own profile that's attached to your account. And so it's going to allow you to choose your own favorites on the board. And so if I go back to look here, you can determine what apps and what websites that you want to create a thumbnail or a favorite for here. It's also going to keep track of any recent places that you have gone in your account. And it's going to allow you to really customize your files. So you can access your Google Drive directly from files. You can access your Lumio directly from files. And you can save things from your Google Drive directly to the board. And it's all going to be saved to your specific profile. The same place that you select to sign in, you can also select to sign out as well. Now, if you don't want to sign into your board, you definitely don't have to. There is a guest profile on the board, and you can set favorites to that board, but just know that any of the specific files and everything that you might try saving to the board is not going to save successfully because you're not signed in. So I always tell people, sign in if you're going to access your Google Drive and all of that on your board. Now, also on your board, you have access to an embedded whiteboard. So a lot of the things that Smart Ink did when our computer was connected, you're going to be able to achieve in the whiteboard functions of your board. And you also have a built-in browser on your board. So all of the websites that you would have gone to on your computer, you can now go to directly on your board. One of my favorite things to do is I go to the browser and I immediately go to my Google Classroom, or I go to my Google Drive in the browser of my board. So we'll go over that in a few pages as well. Okay, another thing that I wanted to point out here, oh, let me pull up a different picture because this one is way too tiny. I'll go back to this picture. Another thing that I wanted to pull up here that responds to Andrew's question there is there is this screen share at the bottom. So let me circle that. Okay. There is that screen share button right along the bottom of your board. And so when you click that screen share button, that's going to allow you to AirPlay from a device if it has AirPlay. You can Google Cast from a device that has Google Cast. Or if you're using a device that doesn't have either one of those, When you click that screen share button, it's going to pop up with a web address that you can go to. It's a smartmirror.link address. And I'll show this live in just a moment too, that you can go to if your device doesn't have AirPlay or doesn't have Google Cast. So that I wanted to go ahead and thumbnail that at that screen share button if you want to stream content from a phone onto the smartboard. Now, Cindy asked a great question. Could this create a security issue to sign into the board? Yeah, if you have all of your files and everything onto your board, it could create a security issue if you don't do one of two things. The first is when you're leaving your classroom for the day, you want to make sure that you sign out on the board. And to sign out, you'll either click this little face here and click sign out, or in the bottom right hand corner, there's a button that allows you to sign out. So when you're leaving for the day, I really encourage you to sign out because all of your files and all of your work and all of your favorites are going to be on the board. Now, if you don't want to sign in and out every single time you leave the classroom, there's also going to be an option in the bottom left-hand corner of the board to set a PIN for your board, where you can lock your board and set a PIN. And that way students or other people cannot come access your material unless they enter in your PIN. A good question there. Okay, so a few things. I want to go ahead and switch over my screen here so I can show you what that screen share button looks like that Andrew asked about. So at the bottom here, when I click screen share, it's going to open up your directions on the board and tell you all the steps to do. That's what I do love about it. Creating a brand new session. We'll give it a second. Okay, so the screen that I'm sharing on my Google Meet isn't updating. But if you look in the screen where I am with the smart board, where you can actually see me, I know it's hard to see, but it does tell you you can share via AirPlay or Google Cast, or you can open your device or your website and go to smartmirror.link, and then you'd enter in the provided code. So it gives you all the steps that you need to for that screen sharing. And I've also included Andrew and anyone else having questions about this on your agenda. If you need a clear, more step-by-step guide, I do have a quick video there for how you can use that screen share. And then Karen reminds anybody who's wondering about the security issues, she says that the ETS techs can create a pin on your board, but make sure you put in a ticket. So if you forget that pin or something happens, they can help you later. So submit that, what was it called? The Orbit ticket if you need help setting up that pin for your board because you know you want to log in and all of that stuff. Awesome. Thanks, Karen. Okay, so here we go. Now, display here of the board, you'll notice because I'm logged in, and I'm logged in because my little face is over here, I have access to all of the recent places that I've been, and I can add all of my favorites. So you'll see I have a lot of apps and websites favorited. Now, if you ever want to add something to your favorites, once you've gone to it once, it's going to show up here in your recents files. So for instance, I'm going to go here and I'm going to click browser on my board. And I'm going to go to my Google Drive, right? The first thing that I might want to do is favor my Google Drive on the board because I know I go to my Google Drive all the time. Once I've navigated to that website in my browser and I click the home button on my board, notice right there, that first most recent, it says My Drive, Google Drive. So what I can do is if I want to add this as a favorite, so every time I click it, it brings me straight to my drive, I'm going to click that little star in the top left-hand corner. And now it's a green little star, and you'll see under my favorites, my very last favorite is My Drive. And when I select it, because I'm in my profile, it's going to go ahead and bring me over here to my Google Drive. Now, why that is really helpful to open your Google Drive is because if you have PDFs or images or smart notebook files saved in your Google Drive, you can download them onto your board as well. So for instance, I'm going to go into a folder in my Google Drive, and I'm doing this directly on my smartboard. I don't have my computer connected. And I'm going to find a PDF, or maybe you have a handout that you use often with your students. And I'm going to do a long hold. So I'm going to hold on to that PDF, and notice there is a download option. So now from my smartboard browser, I've hit download it, and I've just downloaded a copy of this to my smartboard. Now, I've already downloaded this several times, so I'm just going to go ahead and download again. So now on my smartboard, I'm in my browser. I'm going to go ahead and click this home button. And at the bottom, there are files. Now, these are the files that I have saved onto my account. There's another reason why I love to have myself signed in. When I click files there, notice at the top it says my files, and it has my little face here. And it has an arrow, and it's pointing to Lumio. So what this is showing me is right now, my files are showing Lumio. But I just downloaded something. So that's in my download folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little arrow right next to my files. And when I drop that down, it gives me a few different folders to choose from, such as downloads. So when I click that, look, there is that PDF that I just downloaded from my Google Drive. And when I select anything that I've downloaded from my board, what I love is it's going to automatically open up in the whiteboard app of my smartboard. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to pause here on the files, and I'm going to show you the whiteboard really quickly, and I'll show you how the two work together. So I'm going to go to the home button. And you see at the top, there's an application already built into your smartboard called Whiteboard. And when I select Whiteboard, it's going to bring me to this canvas that has tons of different features on the board. And so on the whiteboard, I can change the background of something. So I'm going to go ahead and do my line paper. And then I have access to all of these tools along the left-hand side when I'm in the whiteboard. So when I hit the pen, I can change the color and thickness of my pen. Right now, my finger is a mouse on the board. So when I use my finger on the board, I'm dragging the canvas along, right? And I can use my finger to zoom in and out on the board by pinching together or apart. So right now, my finger is a mouse. But in that pen area, when I click that pen, the same place where I can choose the colors of my actual writing utensil, in that same area, there is a little icon right here at the top that looks like a finger. I can tell my smartboard, hey, stop making my finger a mouse and instead make my finger a pen. So now I have a pen, like an actual physical pen on the smartboard, or I can use my finger as a pen. That'll be really helpful if you have multiple students coming up to the board. Your board can support up to 20 students working on here at one time. Urge you not to have 20 students up here. But if you had multiple students up here writing on the board, or maybe it's a competition or a small group station, the two provided pens might not be enough for you, or maybe your students fight over who gets the pen. If that's the case, you can say, hey, I just want you to use your finger as a pen. You select that pen tool and toggle on the finger inking setting. Now, when you're done, your finger is still a pen. So if you try to scroll or select anything, it's going to just mark up your canvas. When you're done, you're going to click that pen feature again and turn off the finger inking. And now your finger is back to being a mouse where you can select and move things. Right underneath that finger, or that pen, I should say, pardon me, that pen option, is a select all tool. So this kind of goes back to the question that I think John had earlier. How can you erase everything at once? You can select this tool right here, and with your finger, you can draw a selection box around all the content on your board. And then when you hit that arrow, it's going to allow you to delete everything at once that you've just selected. Now, moving right below, we've got widgets that you can add to the board. So if you need to go over clockwork, or you want to set up a spinner or a timer, you can select those and add those directly onto your whiteboard. I particularly love the timer feature. Right underneath it, you can add content. So if you have content that you want to add, such as videos or images, you can add them from the web or from your board. And so when I go over here, and let's say I type in Halloween, I can pull in images, and this is all safe search, or I can pull in ad-free, I'll say that again, 100% ad-free YouTube videos directly into my whiteboard. Now, moving right below, there is a plus sign here, and this is the hidden gem. I'm going to call this is my hidden gem. If you have not explored this, this is going to be your biggest time saver. When you hit that plus sign, your smartboard already has tons of pre-made backgrounds and materials here for you to use. So you could choose a graphic organizer directly into your smartboard, and then maybe you're going over different content with students and organizing that material to help your students understand something better in class. When I go back to that plus sign, I even have things like manipulatives if I'm going over coins or fractions or clockwork. Tons of pre-made stuff here. I really encourage you to explore. And you can even do exit tickets or pull in files that you already have. So all of these tools are available to you in the smartboard. That's why I love downloading my files onto the board. Because watch what happens when I go to files. I'm going to click home. So I'm going to leave this whiteboard, and I'm going to go to my files. And now when I select that PDF that I downloaded earlier, like I said, it automatically opens inside of the whiteboard app. So now I have my old PDF that I used to make copies of, and I have all of these tools along the side that I can add on top of my handout now, which I think is really valuable for helping organize your content for students. Now, I'm going to pause here because Janelle had a really great question. She says, can you have more than one profile on a smartboard? You can have as many profiles as you need, because what happens, Janelle, is it doesn't save your profile to that smartboard. It saves all of your work like to your domain, your email and password. So when I go over here to the right, the left, and I select my face and I click sign out, then anybody can come in behind me and they can click sign in to their profile. When they're done, they can sign out, and then somebody else can come in, click sign in, and sign into their profile. So if you have multiple different emails, you could sign out of one and then sign into the other. So you could use however many profiles you needed to on the board. I hope that answered your question. Now, that is the quick and dirty, very quick of everything that I could show you here today on your MX Smartboard. I know that I just went over a lot very quickly. So I encourage you to come back and look at these resources, come back to this recording. And I just want to thank you so much for your time and attention today. And again, I'll drop my email if you have any other further questions. Otherwise, reach out to your ETS techs with any support you need, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much.